Hello from Gardening at Douentza here in Ireland, and you're very welcome back to my mini-series, A Year in the Life of a Border. So each month we come along and look at this particular border here behind me and see which plants are looking well. We also see which garden jobs need to be done in this border with these particular plants in this month, and just generally follow it through the months of the year. Okay, so it's May now, a great month to have a look at the green border. So you're very welcome to the video, and we're going to, I guess, start off with a pan of this border, how it's looking right at this very moment. And we're in May, the end of May, and it is a great month for plants to just get going and look their best. But there's been a lot done in this border this month, and I suppose I better start off with the big job that was addressed, and that had to do with the large conifer tree which sat to one side of the border and was getting far too big for its boots. Now, I tried trimming this back in February, but there came a point where I just thought, this tree, it just doesn't look good. It's not given anything to the garden, it's not added anything for such a very long time. It's time to get rid of. And also, one thing to bear in mind is that conifers will suck any moisture out of surrounding borders. So what I found was that about half of this border had restricted plant growth in it, and that's just not good enough. So we decided to take down the tree, and my husband was out there with the saw and the loppers. We didn't get a tree surgeon in, we did it ourselves. And the result of doing it yourselves is that, of course, you're going to be left with a big stump. It was a lot of work, took a lot of time and a lot of clearing up. My son helped out as well, and we got it done. And just at the last moment I thought, well, hey, wait a minute, there is something to be gained here. This tree was adding height to the border, and we were going to get rid of all of that height. So I thought at the last minute, let's leave a skeleton behind. And we left just the framework here, which I must say does look a little bit like it's giving me the finger at the moment. But I'm going to do something like grow a really vigorous clematis up this framework, maybe a montana, something like that, and that will just add just that bit to the border and of course cover up this horrible stump. Now, according to the best gardening books, May is the month, the final point in time during the year where you should have all of your soil filled in. That is, you shouldn't have any bare soil left, because if you've got bare soil you're going to get weeds. So you need to make sure that either the plants that are already in situ have filled out the surrounding space, or else plant extra plants in there. And with that in mind, and the fact that I have some nice plants I want to put in the ground, I decided to add a few little extras to this border. Now, the first one to go in was my Chinese banana, and this is a beautiful plant that never gets very tall and has an amazing exotic yellow flower. And I bought it in France a few years ago. I'm going to link to that video at the very end, where I became enamored by this fantastic Chinese banana and set out to get my hands on it. Having read up about the musella, or Ensete as it is now correctly called, it seems it would probably do okay for me outdoors. So I'm going to try it. I'm going to try leaving it in the ground. Now, of course, if I'd been smart, I would have divided one of those little offshoots before doing this, so I'd have a backup plant in the greenhouse. But anyway, that's the plan for the moment. And the next thing I'm going to put in the border is this beautiful hedychium, or ginger, that I got my hands on when I was in the Azores 2 years ago, and I will link to that video at the very end as well. So this is one that had been culled. It was growing wild, and some park ranger had come along and dug out a whole load of them, and they were all sitting there in a pile waiting to be taken away. And of course I had to get myself a little memento and took one home, and this is it, and it's doing really well. So I'm going to try this outdoors as well and leave it out over winter. And there are dahlias to go into. So this cactus style dahlia is called Painted Girl, and it was a Mother's Day gift from my daughter Ishtar many moons ago. So I'm going to put this in here in the border, a medium-sized dahlia. And if you need any more information about planting out dahlias, again I'm going to link to the video where I did that just very recently. And for the back of the border we have a large, enormous flowered orange one that I have no name for, but it's an amazing beauty, and I hope it'll add so much to this border. Another job to be done this month, but only a little job, was to remove the dead foliage from my Glory of the Snow bulbs. So these are Douentza, and you will have seen them particularly in March when they were in glorious blue flower. Now at this stage the foliage is well and truly dead, so you can just take it away easily, but do be careful not to plant anything on top of those bulbs. And of course May is a time to make sure you have all of your stakes in place. Now you'll know your plants, and I know that this particular leucanthemum is prone to flop a little bit, so I'm going to just put a preemptive stake in here, a preemptive hoop. And at the back of the border, this enormous silphium. Well, it's quite big now, but it is going to be absolutely enormous by the end of the season. It needs staking. It's kind of leaning on top of the lilies at the moment, so I've put the stake between the silphium and the lilies, and I may have to add another couple of stakes because it does get quite heavy. And here's the spot right by the greenhouse step where you can see the heuchera is in fine leaf at the moment, and the euphorbia, the orange one on the right, is just coming to the end of its flowering, so we probably need to do some work on that today. In among the heuchera you can see the ornithogalum is in nodding flower, and above it we also have the seed head of the pulsatilla. Well, just one seed head this year. There's another small one down below that seems to have broken, but they so remind me of the truffula trees in the Dr. Seuss novels, if anybody knows those. I love it. Over here we have the green salmesia, which is that little plant down there, not yet in flower. Leucanthemum to the right of it that you saw me staking not so long ago, and the yellow Youkilis that I grow for its foliage. Directly behind the Youkilis we have the aconite, which also is busy forming buds at the moment. So while the daylily will produce yellow flowers, this will produce tall blue flowers. And right beside the daylily we have this wonderful ligularia that has suffered a little bit from the lack of rain, but it seems to be doing well. Blowing in the breeze today. I think it's just so glad of the cooler weather. And to the back of those both, so the big leaves in the middle of this picture that are kind of bobbing in the wind, that there is a hardy salvia. And you saw when I was planting out the extra plants in this border, I am tending to favour hardy salvias. I think I've had enough of growing the tender ones and overwintering them in the greenhouse, so anything that's hardy is a definite plus. Now this one has amazing leaves, pretty enough blue flowers, and it does seed about a little bit in a slightly thuggish way, but I just love it for those amazing leaves. And just over here to the left of the blue borage and the calla lilies in the pot, we have another salvia, and this is one that produces a very kind of loose pale pink and white flower. I don't think it's perennial, I think it seeds about, so it pops up here and there, but a great one with really soft leaves. And I can see over here that it is just beginning to form some buds, so we will have flowers before long. Seems to be a bit shorter than usual this year. But I guess that's okay because it's decided to seed at the front of the border. And the funny thing about this particular salvia is that they say when it's in flower, it is supposed to smell like a baboon's bottom. I really don't know what a baboon's butt smells like, but it is a kind of funny smell. And here we have the blues. So the Borage has a beautiful blue flower, which you can see there, starry-like to the right, and behind we have the blue Salvia Amstad, which you saw me planting out not very long ago. And behind the Borage we have an Australian plant. Do you see that white flower just behind it? The Diplerina. So let's go and take a look at that. Now the Diplerina is just coming into flower, and for some reason this year the flowers on the left hand side are open before the ones on the right, although I can see buds on the right, so they're definitely coming. No idea what that's down to, but they are cute little flowers with the 3 petals and this kind of yellowy blue centre. And a job that I do in May is to put some manners on my euphorbia. Now this particular euphorbia is very vigorous, and it runs and it overshadows other plants. So in May I like to rip out a good few stems and just give everything else a little bit of breathing space. It might look a bit vicious, but listen to me. Rest assured, this plant will be back in all its glory in a very short period of time. It won't have suffered from this at all. And just here, beside the Diplerina, we have a Youkilis. So this was an experiment this year. I decided not to dig it up and bring it into the greenhouse. I decided to leave it in the ground and see if it would come through the winter. And hey ho, it has. So I just put a clay pot over this for the worst of the winter. And it's coming up with lovely dark foliage from exposure to lots of sun, I guess. Now this one has never flowered for me, so we'll see what it does this year, and then I'll make a judgment call on whether the foliage is enough to kind of continue growing it without the flowers. And speaking of salvias, just directly behind this we have another of my hardy salvias, and this little one is called Bulliana. Now this one I absolutely love, and I thought I'd lost it. Tried to grow it from seed, and oh, I can't remember exactly what happened. But it has gorgeous, gorgeous yellow flowers with a lovely lip, and I am very glad I have it. I'm very glad I'm going to see flowers again this year. And over here behind Salvia Amistad we have one of my favourite plants, which is this Lycanus with its gorgeous silver foliage. But wait till you see the flowers. They're a really, really vibrant cerise. And this plant dances around my garden because it's a self-seeder, and I just don't know where it's going to pop up next, but it really is one of my favourites and one I wouldn't be without. And behind it we have tall, tall lilies, and behind them the silphium that we staked not very long ago. As you can see, I have a lot of likeness dotted in around this border. And up here, just beside the grasses, we have that very dry area where I guess the tree roots and the falling acidic needles are actually corrupting the soil. And I've planted a few new things in there, as you saw me do earlier. So here's the ginger that I picked up in the Azores, and I hope that I can leave this in the ground and that it will go on to do great things. And in front of it we have Alstroemeria. Now this Alstroemeria is a Lig2 hybrid, and I have lots of them seeding around the garden. They pop up in various different places. Absolutely love it. An annual Alstroemeria. But you're going to see something quirky when this eventually opens, and that is here in this border the flowers are slightly different colour to in other borders, and I think it has to do with the acidic soil. So the soil has been tempered over the years by the presence of so many needles and has become acidic. And I do know that acidic soil can affect flower colour. I've certainly had it with daylilies that came out a different colour in my soil than they did in other people's soil, people who had neutral or alkaline soil. So that's kind of interesting. Melanosolenum looking good there in the background. I don't think it's going to grow very tall, but that's okay. It can grow just this tall if it wants to. I do have taller ones elsewhere in the garden. Okay, and that brings me to the end of this episode of A Year in the Life of a Border, the May episode, which I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll check back to see how the border looks in June, at the end of June. And if you want to see the episodes you've missed so far, then I'm linking to the playlist I made, which contains all of the videos about this particular border. Thank you as always very much for watching, and well, I check back for lots more plant stuff. Bye!